Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here. By the way, can everybody hear me in the back too? No need to shout louder than this? Nice. So I'm really delighted to be here. It's been a while since I've been to Otaniemi and to the Aalto area, and it's really great to see this whole Aalto Ventures program and all this buzz around here. When I was studying, I wish we would have had something like this, so I'm really happy for you guys. And I was really excited when Kalle called me and asked me to come talk to you guys here. So I'm really excited to be here. But you must be already wondering, Kalle gave a little bit of introduction of who is this guy here in the front, this weird guy who taught Kalle to drink at the university. So that's not all I am. So he already mentioned my profession. So I do come from the Aalto University. I used to study information networks here, and my majors were information and communication business, and I was also studying artificial intelligence and business process networks. I've also been a researcher at the Aalto University. I've been lecturing here, different courses here, business games, more technical courses, different kinds of areas within the school. I've also been a management consultant after being fed up with being a researcher. That was fun, by the way. There's some of my ex-colleagues here, so it was fun. But I wanted to do something else, so I started a career in management consulting, which was really excited. I joined the Capgemini Consulting organization within their telco and media and entertainment team, which was doing really cool stuff at that time. Nowadays, I'm mostly working with international clients. I'm traveling every week. I'm spending around 100 to 150 days a year traveling, and it's really cool things that I'm working with, so I'm really excited about that. Otherwise, I've lived in Helsinki, Barcelona, Stockholm, and Amsterdam, so I've got quite a good international exposure. Kalle already mentioned that I'm also the founding partner of Magenta Advisory. So in 2010, we founded a management consultancy boutique called Magenta Advisory. So we were 4 founding partners at that time, and now we are 25 people. This spring, we actually sold our company to the Bearing Point Group, and we are still working there for a certain amount of time, that is undisclosed amount of time. What we do at Magenta Advisory is that we do management consulting. So we advise large corporations about their digital strategies, how to transform their organizations in the digital space, and how to really get some results leveraging digital toolings and capabilities. We work across different sectors. You can see some very small print logos here of different customers we work with, both in Finland. So we work with most of the largest companies in Finland, but we also work with a lot of tier 1 clients internationally. Like I said, you can already spot some of the logos from that list. And we focus on digital marketing, digital sales, digital products and services, and so on. So this is another perspective. I'm also a techie, so I'm always loved everything technical. I learned to program as a 10-year-old kid. I was doing some basic programming at that time. I even hosted a BBS. How many of you guys know what is a BBS? Okay, 5. Okay, so that's quite good. So before internet, there was this thing called the bulletin board system. So that was kind of like websites, but before the internet existed. So this was something I was doing. I was also active in the demo scene. Do you guys know demo scene? How many of you know demo scene? Okay, few. So clearly there is some kind of a generation gap here. So it seems. So that was also something important. I was working as a software developer at a small startup, and overall I've been a big fan of artificial intelligence. So that's one side of me. I've always also been an entrepreneur. I started my first business in preschool, selling lollipops. I bought them when going to school with 1 mark, and I sold them at the school with 2 marks. I made a huge gross margin there. My business was blooming. I was growing it really fast until I stumbled upon some regulatory issues. So apparently it wasn't allowed to do business in preschool, elementary school there. So unfortunately, I needed to learn the practical consequences of regulatory issues preventing you from doing doing business since a kid. I'm basically doing some freelance consulting work a long time, and I was trying to calculate how many business plans I've written, and I think that I've written at least 5 business plans. I've started a couple of companies, and I've sold 1 company, so this is also an important part of who I am. But that's not all. I'm also a DJ and a promoter. So I've been organizing different kinds of parties since I remember. So I started with underground raves and forest parties. I was also quite active here in the Otaniemi scene, bringing in some let's say, not so technical teekkari meininki to the Otaniemi community. I've been doing electronic music for a long time. I'm a huge fan of analog synthesizers, and I still play especially different variations of house music, deep house, progressive house, also some chill and lounge music. And also I'm still a frequent visitor of big cities, clubbing destinations like Ibiza or Berlin, and those ones. Those are still one of my favorite places. So this is also a part of myself. So now this guy has been bubbling here for some time about these weird things like he's this and he's that. So the reason why I'm here is, like Kalle explained, is that I wanted to share with you 2 things. First of all, you probably, as part of the whole Aalto Ventures program, I was thinking that you might be interested in getting some practical learnings of what does it mean to be an entrepreneur and what would be relevant to know. And I was thinking that, okay, when I was studying, what would have been the kinds of perspectives and insights I would have wanted to hear at that stage, and I tried to compile some of those insights for you from a very practical perspective. But on the other hand, I also wanted to remind you and give my example of the fact that while you are doing your career, whether it's in entrepreneurship, whether it's in other types of careers, corporate world or whatever, it's very important for you to remember that it doesn't need to eat your soul. You can still remain and keep your own personality and your passions. And that's also a story I would like to share with you today. Let's first talk about one of the important aspects of any entrepreneurial venture, the business idea. So the business idea starts, from my perspective, from understanding a need in the market and understanding what kind of trends, what's happening in the markets. So in my case, when I was thinking about these business ideas, I was looking at the market and realizing what's happening in there, and I could start to really spot this trend of something was happening in the market. You know, all the roads were leading to Rome. Something was happening everywhere I looked, and the huge trend, this mega trend that I was actually noticing, soon turned out to be digitalization. So digitalization is something that nowadays you hear a lot of talking about. You can read about it in Helsingin Sanomat or newspapers, international press. You can read about it every day. There's always something happening in digitalization, whether it's some companies, whether it's some new startups, whether it's some public sector needing to get digitalized. So it's something massive. It's actually the biggest single business trend that's happening in our time, and it's absolutely crazy. So why am I talking about the business trend of digitalization? It's very important that when you become an entrepreneur or anyway launch into a career, you will be spending a lot of time doing that one. And it's quite nice to be doing that in a domain that first of all is something that you like. Digitalization for me was something that I liked, and everything I had been doing previously had something to do with digitalization, and I was passionate about it. Second of all, it's also nice to be doing something that is actually growing, is coming up. Basically, it's nicer to work so that you have actually tailwinds behind you rather than trying to, go fight an uphill battle. So this is a huge opportunity. And also from your perspective, I think that this could be also a relevant trend for you to think about. So if we think of digitalization, I was already saying that it's quite huge. Well, if you look at how it impacts industries, it actually is quite dramatical, the impact. If we take, for example, advertising and media industry, the US print ad market had been growing for 50 years, steadily and bloomingly, until digital disruption stroke. And it only took around 7 years to totally crash an industry, totally crash a business that had been built for 50 years. And this is something that hasn't been seen before in business life. Single business trend coming and devastating a total industry in only 7 years. That's crazy. And exactly similar pattern is now happening in Europe. and in Finland. In Finland, for example, the peak year that for US was the year 2000. The peak year in Finland is year 2011. So similar thing is happening now in Finland too. Another example of an industry which is currently ongoing a heavy digital disruption is retail industry. Of course, you know all these Amazons and all these stories, but it's also something that's quite interesting that the retail CEOs are slowly starting to realize that this is actually quite big. Currently, it's basically the only source of growth in the whole retail industry is coming from online, which is quite interesting considering that retail is heavily driven, for example, by population, which is increasing quite fast. So that's I think is quite interesting. And also a CEO of a Finnish retail company actually has said that in a few years in Finland, you know all those hypermarkets, city markets and the Prismas and those ones, most of them will become obsolete, and you can actually go there to play some tennis or do some indoor sports there because nobody wants to use them anymore. So another example of an industry that's devastated by digitalization. So if we look at digitalization a bit more in detail, we can actually see three waves emerging as a pattern from the whole megatrend. The first wave that we call digitalization 1.0 was focusing on operational efficiency. So that's actually, that was focusing on trying to make the companies work more effectively. It already started in the 60s and it was heavily driven by the IT revolution of that time. And the big winners of this wave of digitalization were companies like the IBMs, the SAPs, the Oracles, companies, these ancient companies that you probably heard the name of, but you probably don't think of as many major players any longer. Then the second wave is something that we could say that really started in the 90s, got a little shocked in the bubble, in the techno bubble, in the millennium bubble, but then especially during the last 5 years has gained significant traction and is currently on a very peak strength of this wave. And the winners on this wave, which focuses on really digitizing the interface between the companies and their customers, are companies that you probably are quite familiar with. Companies like the Facebooks, the Googles, these kinds of companies, Apples, all these kinds of, let's say, the winners of modern times. So they are actually riding the second wave of digitalization, and they've been really successful in it. But we're already now seeing the emergence of the third wave of digitalization. And that's an interesting wave. That's a wave that is actually enabled by new technologies like smart sensors, ubiquitous connectivity, cloud technologies, and artificial intelligence. And that's the third wave, which will be even more tremendous and stronger than any of the previous waves of digitalization. And that's the wave that really focuses on totally reinventing whole companies, what they sell, what are the products, what are the services, and also will be redefining total industries. And we're already now seeing some examples of emerging companies that are riding this third wave of digitalization that are proving to be the first successes. Companies like Uber or Tesla or Sonos or these kinds of companies, they're all riding these kinds of megatrends of the third wave, and we haven't seen nothing on the third wave. And why I wanted to share this with you was that how many of you guys were in Slush? Okay, I figured most of you guys were in Slush. So if you think of it, most of the business ideas that were presented on Slush and most of the people presenting there had something to do with some of these waves. Of course, not all, but most of them, if you really think about them. So this is actually a huge opportunity from entrepreneurial perspective. And this is, from my perspective, if I would be you, I would be looking into this area, especially the third wave of digitalization, extremely closely, as this is a huge opportunity. So to sum up the perspectives on the business idea, it's quite important before becoming an entrepreneur to find a domain that you actually like, and preferably a domain that is actually also supported by positive trends, and try to find your business idea within that kind of a domain. That's usually good for you. You will be having fun when working there, and second of all, it will be good business for you because you will be doing it with tailwinds on your side. Good. Maybe as an example of this one, from my perspective, while I was working as a consultant at Capgemini Consulting, most of my clients' needs, when they came to me and asked for my advice and my help, actually most of them were related to this digitization. So I realized that this is actually something that is big and I need to be doing, and that's basically how I wanted to start Magenta Advisory. So second perspective, this is about talent. Talent is really important when you talk about business and starting companies. And when we talk about talent, the first key question to ask is that what differentiates talented people from the rest? And you can think of with talented people the kinds of people like the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musks, these guys. They were quite talented, I would say. So based on my experience, the really, really talented people, they are the ones that are able to learn the fastest. The world around us changes so fast that it's impossible to have a static set of competences and skills that would bring you far away. So it's very important for you to be successful to actually be able to adapt and learn fast and adopt new skills really quickly. So this is a very important part of talent. So you might then ask, okay, so learning is cool. So how do I actually get to an accelerated learning curve? So this is actually a good question. Learning is a funny thing. When you learn, it comes, the best way to learn is actually by doing something. And when you do something, your learning curve is directly correlated with the effort you put on it. So basically, the more you try, the faster you learn. And now comes the tricky part. If you push really hard and if you try really hard, you are bound to fail. But failing is okay. Failing is really okay because failing is part of the learning process. You need to be failing. If you haven't failed, you haven't tried hard enough. So that's very important. And failing, of course, it's smart to fail on certain topic once, but it's not so smart to fail on the same thing and do the same mistake twice. So it's okay to do mistakes once as long as you learn from them. And that's the only way to really get to an accelerated learning path. You need to have the courage to actually fail. So okay, failing, yeah, that sounds cool, but it's not nice. If I fail, there's negative consequences of that one. How am I gonna protect myself from that one? So that's the nice part. There's nice ways to actually protect yourself from the consequences of failing, and one of the ways to do it is actually by letting somebody else pay for your mistakes, which is quite cool. So basically, instead of you having to pay for the severe consequences of your failure and your learning curve, you can actually have somebody else finance for that one. Imagine somebody actually investing in you and paying for your mistakes. Isn't that crazy? That's really amazing. So this is something that's really interesting, and also an advice that was given to me actually by a professor at Aalto University originally, Professor Peter Kelly. Do you guys know him? Anybody knows him? Good. Cool. So that's something that I still respect Peter for. I was laughing when he said something on these lines to me, and I was thinking, what is this guy saying? Until I realized it, and that's exactly what I did when I went before starting my own company to actually work for somebody else to learn and get the learnings and get somebody else to pay my learning curve. So as a key takeaway from here. It's not a bad idea to let somebody else pay for your learning curve. And I'm pretty sure that many of you are excited. How many of you have been thinking of starting an own company? Okay, good. At least half. So how many of you are graduated already? How many of you have work experience, like real work experience? Okay, good. So having work experience and wanting to start an own company is a good combination, because then probably if you worked hard, you probably learned something and somebody has paid your learning curve for you. But if you're coming straight out of school and want to start a company, that's really great, but you just need to put twice the effort for it, because the world is quite harsh, and you need to fail. So I think that this is the key takeaway from here, that of course, if you have the drive and the motivation, go ahead, start the company directly, but it's never too late to start the company. You can first let somebody else pay for your learning curve. That's okay. Good. A third important topic related to entrepreneurship is the team. So you've probably been preached so much about how the team is the single most thing that VCs look about when they actually evaluate different teams and business ideas. Yeah, it's true. And the team is actually one of the key success factors of any venture. But what is a winning team? So, based on my experience, winning team constitutes of talent. You need to have sufficient pools of talent on the right areas to be able to be successful in whatever venture you're aiming to do. You also need drive. You need to be motivated. The team needs to really be hungry for success and needs to be active and willing to put the extra mile to be successful. But the team also needs to have chemistry. This is quite important. So the team needs to be able to work together solidly as a team, not just as a part of individual high-performing individuals. And the team also needs to have shared incentives and shared motivations. So these are the four elements that you need to be able to actually build winning, world-class, high-performing teams. Talent and drive we've already talked about, but let's talk a little bit about chemistry. So I already mentioned that chemistry defines the dynamics of the team. It's very important that the team is able to perform together more effectively than the sum of its parts. So this is very important. You need to have the right competences, but they need to also be compatible with each other so that they actually reinforce each other. Another very important part of the chemistry is fun. And this is something that I was missing when I was going to the corporate world. It was all about this corporate gray, boring stuff, but I was really missing the fun, and that was something that I wanted to insert into corporate world myself. And that's also been something that is part of the success. For the team to be able to want to spend the time you need to be successful together, pursuing a joint objective, you need to have fun together. That's absolutely, if you spend all that time together and you hate it all the time, you won't be able to go all the way. So this is actually really important. And as an example of these ones, of these areas, so when we were starting Magenta Advisory, all of our founders were actually working at the previous employer. And we actually were emerging there. We were differentiating from the pack that there was this group of highly performing individuals, who had fun together. They were laughing. They were really successful in what they were doing. They worked really hard, but they also were laughing all the time, and they had fun. And everybody else were looking at are these guys just joking, or how is it possible that they're actually having fun and being successful at the same time? And it was all about the chemistry, and that's actually very, very important. Also something that usually isn't taught that much in these entrepreneurial classes. Another perspective on the team is a bit more, let's say more stricter, more harder. Of course, being a team and being part of the team, that's very important. But trust is not enough. You also need to be able to verify and ensure that your team members are really aligned against the shared target state. First thing is that you need to understand that a venture and a business is something that is a project that is very long. It takes usually 2 or 3 times longer than what you would have expected. So that's very important that when you think of your team members' long-term ambitions, they need to be aligned. Think of a case where one of the founding partners, for example, would be wanting to create the business to become his work-life balance optimizing machine, where he would need to work the minimum amount of hours for the rest of his life while money is coming in, whereas the other person, for example, would like to build it really fast, grow it really fast, and then sell it and take the money, as an example. So these are different kinds of incentives. Or then also, if some of your founding partners, for example, wants to do volunteer working, or some wants to actually live abroad, and your venture would actually be geographically focused on a single country. So you need to be able to talk about these things. It's very important for you to also think about 5 years ahead. What are the guys that you should be forming the business with going to do in 5 years? Another very important thing is that you also need to verify it by actually contracts. So this is actually something very important, because when you will start a business, there will be problems. Either your business is not going so well, something happens in your business's external environment, or something happens in somebody's personal life. So there is always huge issues and problems that will be arising, and those are usually a big risk for the success of the whole company. You know, that kind of risk can really break a super successful team apart if that's not properly mitigated. And the best way I've learned to mitigate that kind of risk is to, before you start the venture, already start to think about and agree beforehand on how to resolve potential conflicts of interest. Let's take an example that somebody wants to suddenly have a study leave. Okay, well, what happens to the shares? What happens how do you divide the returns of the company if somebody is not actively participating in the operational work of the company? How does this work? So you'd better agree on all of those ones beforehand, so that when the situation comes for that individual to make the decision whether they want to have this study leave or another personal decision, it's absolutely crystal clear for them what are the consequences of that decision. It's clear for everybody. The business can go on, everybody knows the rules of the game, and the business doesn't need to take any kind of a hit from that one. And that I think is very important. From practical experience, this stage actually delayed the starting of Magenta Advisory almost 6 years ago, about 2 months. We spent around 2 months iterating the shareholders' agreement, ensuring that we have actually covered all the possible instances, all the possible situations we can think of what could go wrong, what could be any difference, what could be any problems that would happen, and what would be how would that kind of conflict of interest be resolved. And that's actually been really good, because of course there has been problems, of course there has been changes and issues, but those have never stopped our company, because it's been crystal clear for everybody. So this is a very important lesson to really spend time on this one. And as a key takeaway from this one, it's really important when you build your dream team, you need to ensure that it's balanced, and it's something that you like to spend time with, but it's also, and you need to ensure that all the incentives are fully aligned, both from the softer side, but also on the more harder or more concrete side. So, the 3 previous topics were, let's say, the boring part. You've probably heard many people here on this stage talk about all of these topics, and you've heard those variations of these same learnings from different people. But I'm not sure if this is an aspect that is often talked about so much. And this is also the aspect that Kalle wanted me to share with you today. And let's first, be frank and clear about it. Entrepreneurship is really hard work. It's really hard work. You need to work hard. You need to work at least 60 hours a week, and you need to still be able to smile after that one. So it's not a joke. It's not a game. It's hard work if you want to be successful. But this doesn't need to mean that you will need to lose your soul. So there's still lots of room to actually do the things you love, the things you are passionate about. And for me, my passion has always been this DJ life, organizing parties, clubbing, producing music, doing all of these things. And when I was studying, I was having a hard time deciding which in the road fork, which route to take. Should I actually go to the career mode and do a traditional career coming from Aalto University, this kind of traditional career route, or then should I actually start to do something like professional DJ, promoter, this kind of career? And it was a hard choice for me. I ended up finally of choosing the career path. I was too ambitious to do the DJ promoter route, as many of my friends who are professional DJs and promoters, I could see what kind of their daily life was, and let's say that I'm really happy I didn't make that choice then, but I also didn't want to give up the DJing and the other parts, so I wanted to keep it on the side. So what happened was this weird double life situation where by day I was this consultant, advising large corporations about, how they should do with the digital, with fancy strategy stuff and business cases and those slides and Excels and that kind of stuff. And then in the evenings, I was then, a totally different personality, playing in the clubs, going out to parties, and this was quite an interesting double life. And this was just one example. You might have different hobbies. Some of you, I don't know, you like chess, or you like swimming, or I don't know what it is. But the most important thing is that whatever it is, it doesn't need to prevent you from continuing if you decide to actually start your own company, or then otherwise want to start a let's say demanding career direction. And the funny thing was that I was quite afraid when I started the consulting career path, that how will these two things mix together? How will this is like oil and water, how can this work together? And I was playing at the Ahjo Club around 2 weeks after I had started in management consulting. And I was playing there, the dance floor was full of people, and suddenly I noticed that my new boss actually came to the dance floor. And he noticed me, and I was like, whoa, okay. He didn't know that I was going to play there, so he was like really shocked, and I was really shocked. I was like, oh crap, I probably this will not end good. He will probably think that I'm something I don't know, crazy guy or something. So that was quite awkward situation. But the funny thing is that on Monday at the office, he came to me and he was super excited. He was like, wow, that's so cool, that's amazing. And he even started to promote that to our clients. And that was really funny. That was actually a good example for me that I was afraid for nothing, because you shouldn't be afraid, because actually weird things actually can work pretty well together. There's also interesting synergies between the two lives. In my case, between this DJ life and this consultant life. So upstairs, this was from our event Suomen Digimenestyjät. We presented a new research report last week. It was full of people there, and what I'm doing there, I'm having a presentation and talking to people. Then below, I'm performing. There's the dance floor, and what I'm doing there, I'm also performing in front of people. So there's clearly synergies. So there's clear synergies between all performative arts, whether that's DJ or music or whatever. Even if you go do sports and you go to sports competition, just being able to be in front of masses. The interesting part also with DJing is that one of the most magical things about DJing is the fact that when you have a dance floor full of people, and people are really excited, you can actually really, like a magician or a wizard, you can impact people's feelings and their emotional states by just doing small tweaks in the music, and that's an amazing feeling. And actually, when you think of it, when you do presentations and when you, for example, facilitate workshops with your clients, it's actually also about the same thing. It's about how to bring your audience through a story of emotional states. It's exactly the same thing as with DJing. So it's actually quite interesting that you will find these kinds of synergies between the other aspects of your life and your business, whether it's entrepreneurial or career otherwise. So that's, I think, quite interesting. Also, it's quite good to realize that whatever your industry is, usually you hang around with people who come from the same type of background than yourself. If you're a techie, most of the guys who hang around during the days are probably techies. If you do business, it's the same thing. So usually it's quite uniform, the group of people with whom you work. And we tell ourselves that that's not the case. But if you take the broad perspective, that is the case. And when you have your hobbies and other passions in your life, it's actually a huge richness to your life to be able to share perspective with people who come from totally different kind of angles. From my perspective, in my daily work, I need to be really analytical, and I need to be really precise, and I need to be really structured, and that one. And when I'm off work, I love being with people, like creative people who are no structure. They are not analytical at all. They just say whatever they think about, and they admire the colors of the rainbow or whatever. That's amazing. That's something I could never do, and that's such a good richness, and that's also something that is really good. Sometimes that gives also really good practical perspectives to work. Sometimes they actually make you think about the problem that you're facing at work from a totally different angle. And that's actually a huge richness and a huge benefit. And having and remaining and maintaining your other side of your life, other than work, and being honest and continuing with your passions actually gives you the platform to be able to have these kinds of interactions. Another perspective which is actually really important and that has been really valuable for me is that traveling actually brings a lot of perspective and expands your viewpoint. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel a lot through my work. So I've been able to do that for years. I think that I've been now traveling around every week for around 8 years in a row, and that's been really good opportunity. I've seen lots of cool places. I've lived abroad, and that's been amazing. But even if you wouldn't have to travel from your work, this is actually really good for you to expand your perspectives. And also, if you think of it from the entrepreneurial perspective, we were talking about the digitalization. And if you think of Finland and Finnish market, that's the smallest market in the world. That's a really bad market to do any digital business there. So you need to think big. You need to think global. And if you only know your own country, how on earth are you able to think about global? So this is also very important that you need to keep your mind open and leverage the fact that we are fortunate enough that we can actually travel the world. And this was, for example, as an example, last summer, I took 3 months off, which is not very easy in an entrepreneur in industry like management consulting, and I did a round the world trip. So that was really cool. So I did a 3-month around the world trip, going to places I had never gone to, and going to places where you usually wouldn't be able to go because they're so far away that even in 2 weeks trip, it's hard to go that far away. And that was really amazing. When I came back to work, I was really so full of ideas. I was so enlarging my perspective that was super good, also from the work perspective. So again, this is also something that is really beneficial for you from work perspective. To summarize this discussion, even if you start a startup and a new venture or start going to your career, that doesn't mean that your life ends. That doesn't mean that all the fun things you've ever done, you need to stop them immediately. You need to become a boring grown-up adult that doesn't do anything fun. So that's not true. So you should definitely never forget who you are and also what you're passionate about, and don't be afraid to combine that with whatever path you may choose. So I think that's very important. To summarize the discussion, I've been just blasting away these different kinds of learnings or perspectives, and just as a key takeaway, what I would want you to remember. So these are the things that I was really hard thinking. What would have been the key things I would have heard, I would have wanted to hear when I was still studying? And these were the 4 main things that I came up with. First of all, really find a domain that you like, and also that would be positively supported by positive trends. That's a good place to start your business in. Second of all, let someone else pay for your learning curve. That's also very important. That's actually really good. It's not nice for you to have to pay for your learning curve yourself. You can do that, but that's not so fun. Third of all, build a dream team that works together, that has fun together, and everybody is fully aligned. And the last but not least, never forget who you are and what you're passionate about. So these are the key takeaways I wanted you guys to remember. And that's the story I wanted to share with you, and I would be really happy to hear your comments, your thoughts, and questions about these perspectives and these ideas.
Yeah, obviously, you said when you become an entrepreneur, you have to work very hard, say 60 hours a week. You mentioned, and then the DJing at night. So I thought that you weren't the sleeping.
Luckily, it's not every day both. So you can work the 60-hour work week, and then in the weekend you can have a big night out. Maybe Monday you might be a bit sleepy, but you'll get used to it.
Yeah, I've been actually sharing a lot of your thoughts. So I also have a background in electronic music. I used to be the president of Entropy, the Electronic Music Association here in Aalto. So kind of like the best learnings I've ever actually had was through that association that like organizing a big project and managing all the moving parts were actually way better than in many of the courses or whatever I've done otherwise. And when I also found myself in Design Factory working on real projects, I found that the things that we had been doing had some like actual names of like the method and so on. We had just been finding those by practice. And also, what I think I've been able to combine all of these was that I took Otto University over to Burning Man this year.
Sorry, which one?
To Burning Man.
Oh, cool.
And we built a 6 meter long pikefish with a container in its mouth.
Cool.
And that was also a huge learning experience for all those. And being able to maneuver something like that was really something that is beneficial in terms of product development, in terms of team building, in terms of creativity, in terms of operations management.
Yes.
And so that's kind of like I've been trying to find these kind of like how can you benefit from this another world and taking it into the other.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice to hear. That sounds very familiar to me. I was also organizing clubs and forest parties and all different kinds of parties when I was studying. I wasn't part of Entropy. I went to Entropy's parties a lot, but I had my own party organization called Härski Jytke. So we organized also that one, and I did my first budgets. For example, I remember when I did the first accounting course in Aalto University. I remember, hey, this sounds really familiar. I've done this when I've done the budget for my parties, or then organizing all the working list for all the workers within the party, or how to get everything in place, and also the artistic concepts of what kind of music is played at the different stages. So it's actually really useful. And there's lots of benefits both ways around. So it's really good to hear that you've shared this thought and this feeling too.
What about your lollipop sales, about the Magenta Advisory? How did you get your first few customers?
So we were fortunate enough that because we were doing management consulting, we had already established networks. So for example, my first client at Magenta Advisory was a Dutch client, and it was actually a person I had worked with before who had moved to the Netherlands. And then when we started Magenta Advisory, I called him and said that, hey, we have now this thing called Magenta Advisory. I'll come to work with you. When can I start? And that's really good in kinds of, but of course that's professional services, and that's professional services usually it's a trust business, so it's a lot about networks. So that's also one of the perspectives that, especially if you consider that kind of business areas, getting somebody else to pay for your learning curve is actually really good. Because trying from scratch to enter that kind of a business without the networks means that there will be a lot of failing ahead, which is good, but it will take time, it will consume resources and money. So from that perspective, we were fortunate.
I want to ask you about failure. I'm from a different interest, different line of profession, which is arts and design. Mm-hmm. And as an artist, you build your career on taking risks. Mm-hmm. And if you don't take them, you drop. Mm-hmm. There is no financial reward after this. This comes after, if you're lucky, 10 years, maybe 15. But the idea of failure and recovering from failure, have you ever had a failure which has been hard to recover from?
Yes, I've had those ones, and especially failures that actually, eat my character in a way, and I know sometimes it can be really bad for your self-confidence, and especially I have those kinds of failures all the time, unfortunately. But I try to ensure that I won't fail on the same things. But I think it's an important part of the fact that if you really put yourself in line, if you really invest your whole personality and everything you get, you are playing with high stakes, and then when you fail, that actually is not easy to come by with. And that's something that you need to kind of, I have tried to build this kind of pessimistic approach, which is interesting. I always put my character on stake, but I prepare mentally in my head, I pessimistically prepare for the worst in my head, which is interesting. It's kind of my protection mechanism of how to protect that. I put everything all in, but then, okay, if this fails, it's fine. I tell myself that it's okay, and that also gives me the courage to put all in. So that has been, yeah.
Well, I guess it's something you can train, which you are also, as an entrepreneur, most likely you have to train it.
Yes.
Or else you should go and work for someone else than yourself.
Yes.
But I came across this very interesting concept called a fail-con a few months ago.
Okay.
Which is a fail conference, which I think could be organized within the university as well. It's people from all different disciplines who come together and present a failure as understood within FailCon. It's a failure which has actually led to success afterwards. I don't think
Otherwise it can be a bit...
But I thought that was a very nice thing that could be promoted.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's cool. Maybe AVP should organize some failcons. Huh?
I want to ask a question about the dream team. How do you find the talents, like talent in a different field from you? Because if you have no resources or no network in the field, but you need a talent or you need a partner from that field, how do you find this person?
Yeah, so in our case it was in a way easier because we were already working and we had good networks on it. But I'm facing exactly the same kind of problem in my work every day when I'm trying to find my job is kind of trading people's lives. I rent people in a way. So I face every day the same situation that my clients have a problem where they need certain kinds of competencies and I need to figure out where will I get them, and I can't get everything always from my own charters. And I think it's very important in these cases to really understand what are the different competences that you need. And from my perspective, I'm never, of course, you want to see the papers and see the track record of people, but at least from my perspective, what's more important than that one is how the people actually work in practical situations. So when I try to assess whether a certain person is suitable for a certain role or does have the competences, I usually don't just ask questions, but I try to make them do some kind of practical exercise or practical case, how they will actually apply that skill set to the problem setting. So that has been a way of how to actually assess whether certain is suitable. I don't know if this answered your question, or were you more referring to where can you find people or
like where?
So in my line of profession, it's an investment that needs to be made to actually create the networks. So it's always, when you know somebody or somebody knows somebody, that's usually the best way to know people and get to know people. And you do that by going to different events, get to go to meet people, ask your friends to introduce, networking style. So I would say that would be the best way, because then you also have the guarantee of your network, of the trustability of the person.
Just a quick question. So in your current position now, you mentioned your takeaways number 2. Who is actually paying for your own mistakes? Like what strategies you put in place?
So the biggest financer, I should probably have some kind of t-shirt with the logos, the sponsors from my mistakes. I think that the biggest single sponsor for my mistakes was the Capgemini Consulting, because I went there and I was really pushing the limits. I was really putting myself there, and I was actually building some new kinds of business there. So they didn't have the digital business consulting before there, and I started building it. And when I was building it, There were huge failures, but it was fine. It was a huge corporation, and they could assume the costs, and they could assume also the cost, image costs, and everything. So I would say that they would be my biggest sponsor in that one. And all of my previous employees, you know, I've always been an interesting employee in a way that I want to really put my own character there, and I want to also, you know, try to do something of my own within the company. So they've had to put up with it, but they've also helped me learn.
First of all, thank you for the great talk.
Thank you.
I would like to ask about failures. It's very important to have them, but when it comes to dream team and to people, how to manage responsibilities about people? Because I can manage my own failures and my motivation and my later. But if you take care about people, how to do these things?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because it's in a way when you are a team and you need to succeed in many different areas for the team to be able to successful. So if you fail, it's up to you. But when you see your partner fail, how do you react when your partner fails? And that's also a very important part of the whole culture, the chemistry between a team, because that's actually boils down to trust. You need to be able to trust that of course your partners also need to be able to go through the same failure-driven learning curve. And you need to be able to trust them that as yourself, they can do the same, they can do this mistake once, it's fine, they will recover, and they will recover fast because they are fast learners, but I know and I can trust them that they will never do the same mistake again. So it's actually good for the team, good for the group, because now we know as a group that's something we shouldn't be doing, and also trying to learn yourself from failures that others have been doing. And it's also important, and it's trust. Sometimes some people tend to fail more than the others. That's possible, but from my perspective, I don't see that personally. I don't see that as a problem. I don't look at that as being the weakest link of the chain. I would actually ask the other guys, have you been trying hard enough if you're not failing that much? So I think that it's all about the attitude and the culture within the team.
Okay, let's have one more question. Then we have used all the time that we have today.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. I enjoyed it very much, but I was thinking about this, that you said that you should align the incentives between the team beforehand. So was it about really about the contract or was it about team building at that stage? What was it? Because it sounded really weird that you should really write down everything that, or how can you?
Yeah. So that was actually about the contract. The team building was about the talking about the future stage, you know, having some red wine and talking about what do you want to be in the 5 years. But that was actually about contracts. So that I understand it sounds weird, but the whole idea is that you know you can't prevent issues from arising on the way. And if when you are embarked on this journey of doing the business, there will be some problems and you don't know how to react. You know, you need to start to do there will be trade-offs between different people, different roles, and you need to then start to discuss and negotiate. You know, how will those be done? It's always different. You have your emotions in play, your situations. But if before you embark on the journey, you actually think about it, that okay, what if somebody wants to leave? What if somebody becomes sick? You know, what if you know, different kinds of variations. So we actually created a shareholders agreement that I believe was around 12 pages or something like that, and it was full of all the potential scenarios that we could imagine that could happen. And that sounds quite, how do you say it, like rough or crude. But it's been really good, because when we were doing it beforehand, nobody had any vested interests in the company, because we hadn't yet started the company. So we could actually handle and manage and resolve those conflicts beforehand totally objectively. And that was actually really good. And then throughout the years, when we've been in the situations that, crap, we have a problem here, how do we resolve this? It's been easy. Everybody knows what's the rules of the game. So it's basically just creating clear rules of engagement. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. And
cool.
That was actually a really good pitch for one of our courses. So entrepreneurial leadership, it's actually about social processes that you face when you start a company with your friends, and one of them wants to have children and doesn't work as much as he or she used to, and these kind of things. So I know Tenhila teaches that one. It's basically like 12 dilemmas, but that you typically ran into and are good to think about beforehand. Most likely you came up with more than 12, but that at least things about in common between several companies. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you. Last commercial pitch. We are looking for the next digital business superstar. So if you want to do digital management consulting, I'm happy to sponsor your learning curve.
And if you want to become one, on 16th of December, we have the next TLT talk. So it will be Kristo Ovaska, who actually founded Aalto IS and Startup Sauna. And before that, we have this kind of analytics workshop during the day. So about like web analytics and social media analytics. So if you go there and then discuss with Otto, you actually might know more details about certain tools than him. But most likely he will know about the big picture. Slightly more than we in this room. Okay, so thank you for all of you for joining. And of course, if you want to hear more about our stuff, just order our newsletter, join the email newsletter list. And we do have also this disruption workshop on 10th of December with DBWA, the kind of ad agency about kind of like positioning and strategy and how to disrupt markets. So different point of view for roughly the same stuff. But thank you and see you later.